Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
And it's not often I can say I'm welcoming my newest friend on the show, but actually this morning I got the chance to meet up. We have some mutual friends, and we're linked together, and had a lovely lunch with Evan Washburn of CBS Sports. And then we were talking at the end, and he's like, "Hey, anything you need, let me know." And I was like, "Well, what are you doing at 5 o'clock today? Because I got a hole in the show." And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, CBS Sports, Evan Washburn. What's up again, buddy?
Yeah, long time no talk.
I know.
I'm glad you made it back to D.C. in one piece.
I mean, considering the traffic and all the things between D.C. and Baltimore, that's not always a guarantee. So we made it physically and mentally back. We're hosting here this year radio show and ready to talk some hoops. And there is so many great storylines, I think, in this Final Four. And really, I feel like each team has kind of a top one. Is there one that really sticks out to you as kind of your favorite story, that whether it's, DJ Burns at NC State, the revenge tour of Purdue, UConn repeating, on down the list? Obviously, Alabama's kind of, because those other three take those headlines, the under-talked about team here. Is there a favorite storyline for you heading into this weekend?
No, you're right, Craig. I mean, it's chock full of them. I think if you kind of really put me up against it, I would say NC State, just because as much as they're an established brand in college basketball, they've won a national championship, it's hard to imagine just how far they've come over the course of 3 weeks. I mean, Kevin Keatts is probably trying to work for his job, save his job, and this team is completely irrelevant if they lose to Louisville in the first round of the ACC tournament. That's it. And now they're on the doorstep of a national championship game, and they have all the components to win it. So it's not just your sort of Cinderella story a la George Mason, VCU. Again, NC State's maybe more elevated because they're an ACC team. It's the fact that they could actually win this thing that I think adds to it.
Yeah, no doubt. The Keatts side of this, I mean, DJ Burns has kind of become America's sweetheart here over the course of the tournament, and there's the NFL rumors and all the stuff that's going on with Burns. But, I mean, Keatts is such a remarkable story because he was on the hot seat. Like, can you remember ever a situation like this? And especially if you've ever gotten the chance to talk to a coach, it's kind of like, I don't know, I'm on a free ride here, or, hey, this game means a lot to me because I know what it means. I could be out of a job. Can you remember covering something quite like that in your 10 years doing this in the tournament?
I can, and I think the added layer to it was that he kind of came into the NCAA tournament on house money because part of his contract, and this is unbelievable language in the deal, if he wins the ACC tournament, which he did, it's a guaranteed 2-year extension that gets unlocked. So what he did in D.C. in the ACC tournament really set up the next 3 years for him financially, and then you imagine contractually in terms of holding on to the job. And now he's just taken that and run with it. So, look, he wasn't going to be satisfied with that. He's a competitor. He's an unbelievable coach, great guy, great motivator. His story is incredible. I mean, he's coming from the high school ranks, kind of grinding through that portion of his career, to then working for Rick Pitino at Louisville, then what he did at UNC Wilmington, and now he's in the Final Four in a season that he had no business bringing a team there. So, look, I think what he's done is kind of stands alone in recent memory for me.
Evan Washburn, CBS Sports, on the sidelines of the NCAA tournament the past couple of weekends. Nice enough to join us here on the Hoffman Show. As for the game itself, they have quite the tall task in Purdue on the other side of it. Like, what chance do you give NC State to actually knock off the number 1 seed, who is on, as we mentioned, the revenge tour after losing to a 16 last year?
Yeah, it's a tall order, pun intended, because Zach Edey it's a nightmare in terms of your game plan and all the things you want to do over the course of a game on both sides of the ball. I look at it like this. It's not so much how you start the game. It's your ability to survive and sustain over the course of a critical period in the second half, because the way Purdue plays, the way Zach Edey plays, the amount of fouls he draws, the impact he has defensively, what you have to do defensively against him, it just wears on you physically and mentally over the course of the game. And I saw that last week, and not even a week ago, when Tennessee's playing them on Sunday. Tennessee should have won that game by all metrics. I mean, I think they had 11 threes. Dalton Knecht was playing out of his mind, but they just couldn't deal with the wave of Zach Edey over the course of a full game. So that to me is just something that you have to overcome with, one, him having an off night and you being pretty much perfect in every other area of the game, and hope that Purdue, and this is what makes Purdue different this year, isn't hitting threes, because that's really what gave Tennessee a shot on Sunday. Purdue was cold from behind the arc. And if that's the case again, and they get magic out of DJ Burns and they're able to at least keep Edey in that, I would say, 20 to 25 range. I mean, if he gets 40 or anywhere close to that, again, there's no shot.
Yeah, it's jarring watching on television how large Zach Edey is. As you mentioned, you had them last weekend. Like, is it as jarring in person on the sidelines as it is on television?
More jarring, Craig. I mean, we were in a meeting room. It was like a green room at the arena, and we met with Zach and a number of the key players on Saturday. And for whatever reason, he kind of walked over. I think I was sitting next to either Lapis or Catalan, and he kind of walked over us to get to his seat. And just the sheer size of his leg, his femur. I mean, it's the height at 7'4", but it's how evenly distributed his 300 pounds is. It's so well put together. He's done an incredible job with his sort of body mechanics and fitness. And I was using the comp. I mean, looking at his forearm, if you just caught a stray, it'd be like getting a 2x4 to the face, a la Tommy Boy. I mean, it's really that large and imposing. I don't know how guys, and I think, again, that's where it becomes this war of attrition. It just wears you down over the course of the game.
Yeah, I'm not interested. I just imagine being some like 5'10" guard who is, especially like early on in the tournament, you're a mid-major player, you get caught on some switch, and you are the guy that gets hit by the 2x4. I'm out on that.
We
At that
don't
point,
even have to go to mid-majors. The guy Ziegler, who's a 5'9" SEC Defensive Player of the Year, just an unbelievable, intense player. But when he's got to deal with those appendages just kind of in and around him, it's got to be frightening.
Yeah, I'm good on that. I'm happy to sit in my little chair here and talking to a microphone and ask people questions. Evan Washburn, sideline reporter, CBS Sports, with us. Of course, on the other side, you have Alabama and UConn. UConn, the defending champ. They have rolled through this tournament so far. They are the overwhelming favorite. That is kind of the betting odds side of it. In your mind, is that true? If I give you like the field versus UConn, are you taking either Alabama or the winner of Purdue NC State, or are you taking UConn?
Oof, I don't know. I always have a hard time with those field ones, but when it's only three other teams, it feels a little bit safer.
Right.
I think, yes, UConn is the safe pick over the course of this weekend. They don't have any real apparent flaws, and they're extremely motivated internally, and that's a credit to Dan Hurley. I think the matchup with Purdue, for all the reasons we just talked about, is the most interesting and the most challenging for them. And that's kind of what I'm expecting to see on Monday. And that to me becomes not necessarily a 50-50 coin toss, but trends more towards, man, that's going to be, for UConn to repeat, they're going to have overcome, I think, the most uniquely challenging team in Purdue.
Two more things for you real quick. You've been doing the tournament for a while now, and I'm just curious how, as you've talked to players and coaches over this last 10 years, like the cycles of college basketball, because that includes like the Zion era where there were huge stars where people were locked in and thinking about NBA futures. Now you've got so many of the best high school players in America going to G League Ignite or Overtime Elite or these other places. And so team building has become a little bit different. Obviously, NIL affects college basketball as well. Like, how many cycles of college basketball do you feel like you've covered, and how different is talking to the players of 2024 versus, thinking back to 2016, 2018, whenever you want to pick?
No, it's a great question. I would say I don't necessarily sense the cycles per se. Yes, the conversations have definitely changed. The focus on the transient nature, the transfer portal kind of wrapping your head around this player was on this team a year ago. Now he's facing them in the second round, and this is this player's DJ Burns. He's on his third team of his career. So all those things I think are definitely different than the first few years doing the tournament. But one of the things that makes this event magical, and we talk about it, you've talked about it, I'm sure, over the course of the last few weeks, is kind of all that the noise to some degree kind of fades away, at least during the 40 minutes of the game. And they kind of resemble what they were when I started, I guess, 9 years ago, and whether it's somebody I've worked with who's been doing it for 20 years, because it's the magic of the venue, the environment. It's a neutral site. The courts are completely different in the sense that, like, you don't know where you are, and the upsets inevitably happen. I was in Pittsburgh for the Oakland, Kentucky experience, and that feels very similar to a St. Peter's or a FDU, or I could probably pick a team from 10 years ago. So there's always these sort of beats to a tournament, whether it's remember that buzzer beater, remember that team that made the run. I think this year's tournament's been great because we got all that the first two rounds. And let's be real, when you get to the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight, that's when you want the established brands and the big boys to play. And now we have a great Final Four with that. So the cycles, I don't know if I've necessarily known dramatic change or seen dramatic change, but the conversations are in and around the sport, and the fact that you're keeping up with players in different places each year, that's definitely evolved.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then last but not least, as Evan Washburn is our guest, CBS Sports. I'd be remiss, as Ian, our buddy, your broadcast partner, of course, on the NFL on CBS during the falls. He is about to call his first Final Four. Amazing honor, and obviously so well-deserved. But you and I know Ian well. I know you have to have like a go-to Ian story, probably some that would have been better to be shared at lunch today. But at least one that's radio appropriate. I must ask you your favorite Ian Eagle story.
Favorite Ian Eagle story? Man, I don't know if I have like one that sort of, because I think one of the cool things about Ian for viewers and listeners and people that know him, like yourself, is he is everything that you get on the air. So kind of everyone's experienced the version of Ian that I get on the weekends throughout a NFL season and all those things. The coolest thing I think that I would find interesting about a person at that level of our industry, and that is now the voice of a sport in a lot of ways, he doesn't make it that big a deal. I've read, and I know he said it. It's for him in a lot of ways. It's just another weekend of doing the tournament. Now he obviously, as anyone would and should, has incredible appreciation for the opportunity. But I think, unfortunately, and it's just the nature of it sometimes, like we can make things feel bigger than they are or expect a level of attention because I'm doing something that's on that stage. And the coolest thing about Ian is that he brings that level of just sort of like, nah, this is what I do. It takes a real kind of swagger and confidence to have that mentality. So it's not necessarily a story, but I think it's a window into what makes that guy tick and what makes him really so good at what he does. He'll treat this weekend the same way. Not only did he treat the first 2 weeks, but he treated a regular season game on a Sunday on CBS in Bloomington, Indiana. And that's what I think the great ones do, and he's one of them.
No doubt. It's so funny because I think Ian would find hilarious us agreeing like, yeah, that guy's got swagger, but he does. Like, that's such a good word for it. And I will also just say, I'm sure you read the piece that Brian Curtis did on Ian in The Ringer, which was just phenomenal. And one of my favorite anecdotes from that was when he told Noah about getting the Final Four job and that Nance was retiring and he was going to get it. It was like 40 minutes into the conversation. Noah Eagle, of course, his son, for the audience that has not put that together, because clearly, apparently, you've never seen them both in the same place, because it's pretty instantaneous once you do that. But he tells his son, and then 40 minutes of the conversation, and Noah's like, no, Dad, that's a big freaking deal. You should have led with that. Why did you bury the lead? Evan,
It's so good.
great to have you on the show, man, and great to see you earlier today. I'm sure we'll be talking again down the line, both on and off the air. Really appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man, anytime. Good to catch up.
That
Later.
is Evan Washburn with us here on the Hoffman Show, sidelines for CBS Sports. We will have the games all weekend long between the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan on Westwood 1, which I would mention, Anthony, real quick, like, Ian's lived, and I'm going to go on a bit of a broadcastery tangent here, but I think it's kind of a fun story for people to know. Like, somewhere in an archive, there is a call of Michael Jordan's shot in Game 6 of 1998 that Ian Eagle is the voice of. The call that we all know is Bob Costas on NBC. It's an iconic call. We've all heard it. We've all seen it. But Ian was calling that game too for, I believe it was the world feed. I think it was like the international feed in general. Maybe it was like some specific country that was also English speaking. So maybe it was England or Australia or whatever. But like, Ian has done that kind of stuff for years. And also, like, I believe this popped into my head because of promoting our coverage on Westwood 1. Like, he's called games on the radio, some of the biggest games for years. And so while it is amazing that he has not had the chance to do that on television because the network that he works at is the network that Jim Nantz has been at as long or actually longer than Ian has, for as amazingly skilled as Ian is, part of the reason he's able to like have this ain't new to me attitude about it is because it genuinely is not new to him. I would just love to get the compilation of like big Ian calls that no one has ever heard in the United States, because it is a very long list.
I need to hear some of them, man.
Like it's funny too, because sometimes
track them down.
Yeah, there's like, or like Jay Billis, who is obviously the number one analyst for ESPN for how many years? But because CBS has the tournament, you'd think that he, or like Dickie V, has never called a championship game. It's like, dang, that guy's never called it. It's like, no, he calls it for ESPN Australia. There's like a whole international world out there that has all of our favorite broadcasters on it, and we never get to hear it unless you happen to be on vacation. Like, there's some American that is taking their spring break this weekend in Australia, and they're going to flip on the Final Four at it'd probably be at like 9 a.m. Monday or Tuesday morning.
That would be crazy.
And Jay Billis and Dan Shulman will be on the call.
Wow. I never knew that.
Really?
No.
You just thought like whatever we got here was what you got all around the world?
Maybe not all around the world, but
obviously any English-speaking country?
Yeah. Nope.
Dang. You got different broadcasts. I mean, there's like a world feed. There's obviously Spanish language feeds, but I think that some of the rights holders, like, it wouldn't surprise me if like Sky Sports. Actually, I'm pretty sure this is true. Like for the NFL, the Super Bowl, like Sky Sports has their own broadcast from that they disseminate in England, but it's like maybe I'm trying to think of who does it, but maybe it's like Kurt Warner. I think Kurt actually called it for Westwood 1 this year on the radio, so he might be on the American side, but like it's something like that where it's like Kurt Warner and Rich Eisen are calling the game for everyone in England. Wacky bits. I just learned you something.
Yeah, I mean, you learn something new every day, but I definitely didn't know that.
What could we call for a foreign country?
A foreign country.
Yeah, I mean, English speaking. I'm not trying to get us. We've had our troubles with French and Spanish and all the other languages on this show. We can barely speak English on most days successfully for 3 hours consecutively. What English speaking country do we want, and what event do we want to call?
The Olympics in London.
Okay, so we want to. I don't think you answered the question correctly.
You said what event?
Yeah, what event? So you want and then for what country? So you'd like to call it for England, for the UK.
Okay.
Because London is a city, not a country.
Yes.
Yeah.
An event.
And then what do you want to call, like, track and field? What are we calling it? The Olympics? Can't just be like the Olympics.
Track and field.
Track and field?
I think that's it. The 4x1. Actually, the 100 meters. Quick race.
That's pretty easy. I mean, calling track is not. I've called one track event in my life. Track event in parentheses.
How'd it go?
It was great. You know what it was?
No.
We did a YouTube video with Nick Simmons, who's a former 800-meter Olympian runner, and Lorenzo Alexander, like the former Commanders player.
Yeah.
Me and Chris Gorez, my training with the best co-host, went out to Exos in Phoenix for Olympian versus NFL player NFL Combine. And so we wound up doing 2 videos. We did them versus each other in the NFL Combine drills. So they ran 40s, they did bench, which was hilarious because like Nick died. He actually got like 3-4 reps of 225. Like it was pretty impressive. All things considered, Lorenzo never took his warm-ups off for like the bench. Track athlete, not really great at the short shuttle drill, all that kind of stuff. But then Nick was like, all right, let's get this a little bit more on my turf. Tomorrow, let's go to the track and let's run 100. And they ran 100. It was real close.
Who won?
Nick won.
Okay.
Nick did win on the track. I think Zoe got Nick in the 40 though.
Dang.
And they were both like retired at that point.
Oh, they
Zoe's yeah.
Oh my God, they ran 100 unretired?
I mean, they both still work out.
Or retired, I guess. Oh.
I mean, that was Nick's whole thing at the time. He was doing a lot of fitness YouTube stuff, track YouTube stuff, and Lorenzo's just a monster.
Yeah, still a lot of.
Dude was like 38 years old, 2 years out of the NFL, and still ran like a 5 flat 40.
Yeah,
like laser timed 5 flat 40.
Oh, he's moving then. That's fast.
Yeah, he still got it like that. So, good times. Good times.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.